George Clinton and 20 P-Funk musicians stormed Prince's stage in the middle of his Oakland concert. No warning, no rehearsal, just chaos. Bootsy Collins on bass, Bernie Worrell on keys, horn section blasting random notes, singers ad-libbing over each other. 25,000 people watched Prince try to conduct them like an orchestra and fail spectacularly for 3 minutes. Then George whispered something in his ear that changed everything. "Stop conducting. Start writing. Funk isn't control, funk is flow. We're not an orchestra, we're a river. You can't control a river, you swim in it." 7 minutes later, Prince had transformed from solo control freak to collective participant, proving he was heir to the funk throne by learning to let go. But George's invasion wasn't meant to humiliate Prince. It was the ultimate teaching moment designed to break down a decade of solo perfectionism in real time, forcing Prince to experience what every P-Funk musician had known since the 70s. That real funk happens not when one genius controls everything, but when 20 creative souls trust each other enough to create organized chaos. Which is why George brought his entire family to Oakland not to challenge Prince's talent, but to test whether he could unlearn everything that had made him successful and embrace the one thing his career had never allowed: complete musical freedom without safety nets or predetermined outcomes. July 1988. Rolling Stone's Funk Legacy cover feature spread across 20 pages celebrating funk's golden age. George Clinton, 47 years old, Parliament funkadelic legend and architect of cosmic funk, sitting in his studio surrounded by gold records, smoking a cigar, wearing his signature wild wig. "Prince, how do you view his contribution to funk?" George paused. "Prince? Talented kid, guitar genius, but he learned from me. Parliament funkadelic created funk blueprint. One nation under a groove. Flashlight, that's foundation. Prince took our sound, made it solo, controlled, polished, but that's not pure funk. What's pure funk? Chaos. Beautiful, organized chaos. 20 people on stage at the same time. Nobody knows exactly what's coming next. Spontaneous, cosmic, trusting each other." He pointed his cigar for emphasis. "Prince controls everything. Every note rehearsed, every move choreographed, every song planned. That's discipline. That's pop perfectionism. But it's not funk. Real funk is collective. Family. 20 souls creating one sound, not one-man show with backing band. Could Prince lead P-Funk?" George laughed. "Lead us? 20 wild musicians? Bootsy on bass, Bernie on keys, horns going crazy? I don't think so. Prince is solo artist, but can he conduct chaos? Can he let go of control? That's the test of real funk air," the interview published. Funk Community Debating, August 1988. Prince in Oakland reading Rolling Stone backstage. "George Clinton said you can't lead. Collective, too controlled," Prince read, intrigued, not offended. "George Clinton, atomic dog, flashlight, foundation. He's right. I learned from them. But he's wrong about one thing. I can lead collective. I just choose solo," Prince decided. Oakland show, August 20th. Invite George. Tell him, bring everyone. P-Funk. Full crew. I'll show him. Prince thought proving himself meant demonstrating control over chaos, but George's test would teach him something far more valuable, that real mastery sometimes means abandoning control entirely and trusting 20 musicians to find the groove together, which is exactly the opposite of everything Prince's solo career had taught him about perfection. George received the invitation. Phone call from Prince's management. "Prince wants you at Oakland. Bring entire P-Funk crew. He'll prove he can lead collective." George smiled. "Tell Prince we'll be there, all 20. Tell him be ready for chaos." He called his musicians. Bootsy, Collins first. "We're invading Prince's concert, Oakland, August 20th, teaching moment. You in?" "Always, George." Bernie Worrell, Maceo Parker, Fred Wesley, Gary Scheider. Same pattern. George explained. Storm his stage mid-concert. No warning, no rehearsal. Pure P-Funk chaos. Let's see if he can ride the wave. August 19th, the day before the show. P-Funk crew arrived in Oakland from all over the country. Detroit, Los Angeles, New York. 20-plus musicians, many who hadn't performed together in years, reuniting for this teaching moment. Wild costumes packed in cases, spacesuits, glitter jumpsuits, platform boots, afro wigs, the full P-Funk visual assault. George gathered them. Tomorrow we're testing Prince. Not to prove he can't do it, to force him to evolve. Break down solo thinking, make him think collective. We go on after Housequake. When he's most confident, that's when we break control. George was orchestrating not a challenge but a transformation, knowing that the only way to teach Prince about collective freedom was to create a situation where his perfectionism would fail publicly, forcing him to either cling to control and embarrass himself or let go and discover a completely different kind of musical magic. August 20th, 1988, Oakland Coliseum Arena. 25,000 tickets sold out. Backstage, George and P-Funk crew waited. All costumed, all ready. Don't follow his directions, George told them. Play what you feel. Let him experience organized chaos. 8 p.m. Prince's concert began. Tight, controlled, choreographed. Alphabet Saint opened, funky, crowd wild. Delirious followed, keyboards, dancing, complete command. 1999 closed first section. 25,000 singing along, everything exactly as rehearsed, every note precise, every move timed. George watched from wings, complete control, beautiful, but not funk, not yet. 8:45 p.m. Housequake, finished. Prince took water, smiled. George made his move. He walked onto stage, slow, theatrical, purple suit, wild hair, sunglasses. 25,000 gasped. Is that George Clinton? Then the flood. 20 P-Funk musicians poured from both wings. Bootsy with star bass, Bernie at portable keyboard, horn section, instruments ready, singers in glitter, percussionists with congas. Stage transformed from controlled domain into cosmic party explosion. Prince stood center, surrounded, calm, but surprised. Not planned. Not rehearsed. Chaos invading order. Prince had spent 45 minutes demonstrating complete mastery of his craft, but in the next 10 minutes George was about to show him that all that mastery meant nothing when faced with 20 musicians who didn't follow directions, didn't rehearse, and saw funk not as something to control, but as something to surrender to completely. George Clinton took microphone. 25,000 fell silent. Prince, we came to test you. Prince held his microphone. George Clinton, godfather of funk, welcome. You rid Rolling Stone. I said you can't lead collective. Too controlled. I read it, disagreed. But I'm listening. Then prove it. George gestured to 20 musicians. My family. P-Funk. We don't rehearse. We don't plan. We just play. Conduct us. Lead this chaos. Show me your heir to funk throne. Crowd erupted. Unprecedented. Living legend challenging another on his own stage. Prince looked at 20 musicians. Bootsy grinning. Bernie adjusting keyboard. Horns warming up. What's the song? George smiled. No song, just funk. You lead, we follow. Or we don't. That's the test. Prince nodded. All right. He turned to P-Funk. 20 musicians who'd created the blueprint he'd learned from. E minor groove. Bootsy, start bass line. Bootsy started, but weird fills, unexpected syncopations, unpredictable. Bernie, keys, simple chords. Bernie played. Not chords, cosmic sounds, space noises, wild runs. Horns, come in on 4. Horn section blasted. Not together, not on 4. Chaotic bursts, 25,000 confused. This didn't sound like music, sounded like noise. Prince had just discovered what George already knew, that you can't conduct chaos the same way you conduct order, that control only works when Everyone agrees to be controlled and that P-Funk operated on a completely different principle that Prince had never experienced in his decade of solo perfectionism. The principle that great music sometimes emerges not from one person's vision, but from 20 people trusting each other enough to create something that none of them could plan. Prince tried conducting with hand signals. Point left for Bootsy to hold the groove. Wave up for the horn section to come in. Circle motion for Bernie to add texture. The P-Funk musicians saw his signals, made eye contact, acknowledged them with nods. They just didn't follow them. Bootsy kept adding fills and flourishes that went nowhere near what Prince was indicating, his bass line wandering into jazz territory. Bernie's cosmic sounds got wilder, not simpler, more space-age bleeps and bloops. The horn section blasted whenever they felt the energy, ignoring Prince's specific cues completely, playing to each other instead of to him. The stage was noise, not music, chaos without direction, 20 talented musicians making sound that didn't connect. Prince's frustration was visible. His conducting got more emphatic, bigger gestures, clearer signals, but P-Funk didn't respond. They were doing their thing, each musician in their own world. 25,000 people watched with growing discomfort. This wasn't working. Prince, who controlled every aspect of his performances, was losing control of his own stage. George stood at the edge, watching, smiling slightly. This was exactly what he'd planned. After 3 minutes of increasingly desperate attempts to organize the chaos, Prince stopped, dropped his hands, looked at George with frustration mixing with confusion. George walked over. The music continued around them, Bootsy's bass wandering, Bernie's keys exploring, horns punctuating randomly. George leaned close, microphone turned off so only Prince could hear. "You're trying to control chaos, Prince, but funk isn't control. Funk is flow. Ride the chaos. Add to it. Don't direct it." "I don't understand," Prince said. "Listen to what's happening. Then jump in. Don't lead from outside. Lead from inside. You're treating us like orchestra. But we're not orchestra. We're river. You can't control river. You swim in it. Now jump in." Prince had just experienced what every solo artist fears most, the complete failure of their leadership in front of thousands of witnesses. But George was teaching him that failure wasn't the end of the test. It was the beginning. Because you can't learn to swim until you're willing to stop standing on the shore, trying to direct the current and actually get in the water. Have you ever had to unlearn everything you knew to learn something new? Prince spent a decade mastering solo control, every note planned, every move choreographed. Then George forced him into a situation where none of that mattered, where 20 musicians operated on completely different principles, and his perfectionism became obstacle instead of tool. That moment when your greatest strength becomes your biggest weakness, that's when real growth begins. Share a time when you had to let go of control to discover something better. Prince stopped conducting, just stood there, listening. Bootsy's bass was finding a groove, not the one Prince had tried to impose, but something organic, something that emerged from Bootsy's decades of funk experience. Bernie's cosmic sounds were rhythmic underneath the chaos. There was structure there, just not traditional structure. The horns were chaotic, but they were feeling something, responding to each other, even if they weren't responding to Prince. Prince picked up his guitar, didn't tell anyone what to play, just joined. He found a riff that fit into what Bootsy was doing, not leading it, complementing it, adding texture to the existing groove instead of trying to create a new one. Suddenly, something shifted. The chaos was still there, but a groove was emerging. Not planned, organic. Bootsy heard Prince's guitar and adjusted slightly. Now they were locked, bass and guitar finding each other without words, without direction, just through listening and responding. Bernie heard the bass guitar lock and added funk chords at perfect moments. Not because Prince told him to, because that's where the music needed them. The horn section heard the groove solidifying and found their moment to blast together, still wild, still chaotic, but now part of something instead of separate from it. 25,000 people felt the shift. "This is working!" someone shouted. The crowd started moving, feeling the funk emerge from the chaos. Prince was learning what George had tried to teach him with words, that the best music doesn't always come from one person's vision imposed on others, but from multiple talents listening to each other so intently that they create something none of them could have planned, which is exactly what P-Funk had been doing for 15 years and what Prince had never experienced in his solo career until this exact moment. Prince stopped being conductor, became participant, dancing, not directing, playing guitar wild, matching P-Funk energy. Singers ad-libbing. Prince ad-libbed back, call and response. No script. The groove locked. Bootsy and Prince on bass guitar, foundation. Bernie cosmic funk chords, horns screaming at right moments. Percussion driving. Prince's falsetto cut through chaos. Not leading vocal, adding layer to collective sound. The music built, not planned. 21 musicians feeling same rising energy, responding simultaneously. Bootsy's bass walking, Bernie's keys cosmic, horns blasting together, synchronized through feeling not direction. 20 voices contributing to controlled chaos. Prince wasn't controlling, participating, guitar fitting into spaces, voice adding texture, dancing responding to rhythm. George watched, nodding. Now he gets it. Final 2 minutes, cosmic explosion. Every musician full out. Chaos that made sense. Individual talents creating collective magic. 25,000 on their feet, minds blown. Funk in purest form. Spontaneous, wild, perfect. Music ended naturally. Nobody planned ending. Everyone felt it arrive, stopped together. 15 minutes standing ovation. Not just for music, but for transformation witnessed. Prince had discovered what George knew all along, that perfection isn't always about control and planning, that sometimes the most powerful music emerges when you trust chaos enough to jump in without knowing where you'll land, and that being heir to the funk throne didn't mean mastering control, but mastering surrender, which is exactly what happened when Prince stopped trying to be boss and started being brother. Applause died. George walked to Prince center stage, both sweating, breathing hard. George embraced him. "You passed. You're heir. I almost failed. I tried to control." "Exactly. And you learned. You came thinking funk is control, left knowing funk is freedom. I've been doing this 40 years. You learned in 7 minutes. Let go. Trust collective." Prince took microphone. "George Clinton just taught me biggest lesson of my career. I've spent 10 years controlling everything, because I thought control equals perfection. But tonight, George showed me. Sometimes perfection is letting go, trusting chaos. P-Funk isn't just band, it's philosophy. I just got schooled by the master, George. I came thinking you can't lead collective. I was wrong. You can lead, but you had to unlearn first. Tonight you did something I've never seen. Solo artist becoming collective artist in real time. That's evolution." George removed his crown, literal crown, placed it on Prince's head. 25,000 gasped. "Funk throne is yours, but remember, it's not throne of control. It's throne of freedom. One more. Together. You lead half. I lead half. 5 minutes. Ultimate funk jam. First 2 minutes, George led, chaos style. Next 2, Prince led, structure style. Final minute, both led, fusion. 25,000 witnessing generational bridge. Backstage, 1 a.m. Prince still wore crown. First 3 minutes was disaster. George laughed. That was the point. You had to fail first. Your whole career. Control. Tonight I forced you into chaos. You survived, thrived. When I stopped conducting and joined, everything clicked because you stopped being boss, became brother. That's P-Funk's secret. No boss, just family. You wanted me to prove you wrong, didn't you? George grinned. Of course. Public challenge makes lessons stick. Bootsy joined, emotional. Prince tried to control my bass. I ignored him. He got frustrated, then listened. Started playing with me, not at me. That's when magic happened. August 21. George on MTV. Last night, Prince conducted P-Funk. Failed first 3 minutes. Then got it. That's transformation. Funk Throne is his now. 1989. Prince Plus. George studio collaboration. We Got the Funk. 2016. Prince died. George tribute, crying. 1988. Oakland. I tested Prince. He evolved. Solo control freak to collective free spirit in 7 minutes. That's genius. Miss you, Funk Air. George had given Prince more than a crown. He'd given him permission to be imperfect, to lose control, to trust other musicians enough to create something none of them could plan, which is exactly what funk had always been about, and what Prince's solo career had never allowed him to fully experience until 20 P-Funk musicians invaded his stage and forced him to choose between perfection through control and magic through chaos. And Prince chose magic. The greatest lessons don't come from success. They come from public failure, followed by transformation. George could have just praised Prince in that Rolling Stone interview. Instead, he issued a public challenge that forced Prince to fail in front of 25,000 people so he could learn something more valuable than any solo perfection: how to trust chaos and create with others instead of just for others. Share this with someone who thinks control is the only path to greatness. Sometimes you have to let go of everything. That made you successful to discover what will make you legendary. But this wasn't the only time Prince had to unlearn success to discover something greater. There was another night, another challenge, another moment when someone forced Prince to abandon what he knew best and embrace what terrified him most, proving that the artists who become legends aren't the ones who perfect one approach, but the ones brave enough to keep evolving, even when evolution means looking like amateur before becoming master of something completely new. That story begins with someone who thought Prince couldn't handle pressure without his band, and Prince's response taught them that real strength isn't having safety nets, but knowing when to cut them.